good morning, everyone. I'll try to keep this brief as I know these updates are meant to be brief, and we'll try to get you out of here 7:30 on time. So originally my talk was going to be just on Fusarium head blight, but honestly, things are progress and development of the crop is behind where we were last year, probably in the neighborhood of 7 to 10 days. We're usually flowering over Memorial Day weekend, and I think it's going to be at least the end of next week before we start seeing flowering, even in the southern part of the state. So I've had a few other issues that I've been getting calls from growers about, so I thought I'd try to touch on some of those today as well. So here's the topics I want to cover, kind of go over what the current crop status is, talk just a bit about late nitrogen applications, a little bit about pests and diseases, and then Fusarium head blight management, and a couple of events coming up, and then we'll have some questions at the end. All right, so current crop condition. This is rated by the USDA National Ag Statistics Service, and we have a very poor crop condition for the crop overall. As you can see, 27% of the crop is rated very poor to poor, with another third of it rated as only fair. We're way behind where we normally are in terms of crop condition ratings for the wheat crop. And anybody that's been out scouting fields and walking wheat can understand and can verify that these really are actual status reports. So,
just Michigan, Dennis?
Yeah, that's just Michigan. Yep. So the current growth stage in the south, they're at Feeks 9, which means the flag leaf is fully emerged. They will be in boot stage here. In fact, they may be approaching boot stage now. It's been a couple days since I've been down in the south part of the state. In the north, they're at Feeks 5. I did find some plants yesterday that did not have a node above the ground yet. One node above ground is Feeks 6, but they're approaching Feeks 6 pretty rapidly. And despite the cold temperatures, this crop is actually still developing and growing. Some warm temperatures would certainly, make it progress much more rapidly. But there is a very high amount of variability within the same field out there. You got plants, is sometimes in a field 3 growth stages difference between them. And so that variability is going to be very difficult to manage when it comes time to apply head scab fungicide, because you're going to have plants that are flowering and some that are not even close to flowering. So trying to time that application is certainly going to be a challenge. But here's some pictures of some plants that have got some damping off on the left, and then some emergence issues on the plants on the right. This is common across, I've seen this almost everywhere across the state this year. In terms of damage, this is an aerial image of our state yield trial location at the Gratiot County site, just east of Ithaca. And you can see the water damage in the spots across the field, and we got damage within our plots. In fact, we rated those yesterday afternoon. We should be able to keep the trial and whatnot, but these patterns of water damage is something that you just see everywhere you go. In this particular field, the east side of the field was the tile lines were split a year ago. On the west side of the field, the tile lines, he didn't get the split done. So you can see what the difference is having tile drainage just in this one field. But here's another aerial image of some damage. When you're out walking a field, it's more difficult to get a good estimate of how much damage there really is out there. You can get a drone up in the air and you can really get a better feel for how much there is. And when you're trying to make decisions on whether to tear up a field or not and plant something else, these aerial images can help quite a bit. So that takes me to kind of where we at here. This is some historical data from the National Ag Statistics Service in terms of acres planted versus the acres harvested and the difference. So back in 2012, you can see we planted 560,000 acres, harvested 535, so 25,000 acres were taken out of production, which is about 4.5% of what was planted. And you can follow that, the percent taken out across here. You got 4.8, 14.5 was the high in 2014, 6.9, 6.6, 11, 7.8. And everybody keeps asking me where we think they're going to be for 2019. We planted 590,000. I think we're going to take out all of 10% out of production. If we took 10%, that'd be 59,000 out, with us about 531,000 left. I don't know that we're going to get to the nearly 15% that was taken out in 2014. There are some parts of the state that are really looking bad, but there are also some parts of the state where we have a pretty good looking wheat crop. It's just a little bit behind in development right now. So I got the question yesterday at a field day about late nitrogen application. What do we do if we haven't had a chance to get all of our nitrogen on? We've been delayed, or perhaps even they've been thinking about tearing up the crop and putting something else, so they haven't put any inputs in it. What do we do? Should we put some nitrogen out there or not? And then there was some talk about, we've had nitrogen loss conditions, certainly with all the rainfall that we've had. Should we be putting nitrogen out there? Well, it's important to remember the timing of when nitrogen is needed by the plant. And once you enter this jointing stage, that is the point where the most rapid uptake of nitrogen is occurring. So that's the point at which the crop needs the most amount of nitrogen to be available out there. So if you're in this Feeks 5 to 6 area right here and you don't have any nitrogen out of there and you're going to keep your crop, you better try to get some nitrogen out there, because it's going to be needing it very, very soon. If you're in the south or toward the south and you've got issues of maybe some nitrogen loss conditions, you're thinking about putting some out there. If you're approaching this Feeks state 9, that's something that you want to make sure you're a little bit careful of, because you don't want to burn that flag leaf. If you're going to put 28% and stream it on, maybe cut it with 50% water, so that way you can reduce the risk of injuring the flag leaf. So just a couple things to consider if you're in a position where you haven't put your nitrogen out or you need to put additional nitrogen out. You want to make sure you protect that flag leaf for sure. Couple of pest-related issues. I've been out in a lot of fields, and almost all the fields that I've been in, I can find aphids. There's only been a few that I haven't found aphids in them. The threshold is really very high for aphids. In fact, I'm not sure that we've ever reached a true threshold to apply a control for them. Every tiller needs to be heavily infested. Dr. Chris DeFonso put together a great article that talks about the sequential sampling scouting method for determining whether you should spray. And it's kind of, you go to a spot in the field, you count tillers, how many are infected, and you're either a go or no go. And if you're a go, you do that 10 times. If at the end of that you're still at a go, then you would apply. But usually you're not at a go. Just because the pests are out there don't mean that they're really causing an economic damage situation where you need to apply a control. And if you do apply a control, remember you're killing all the natural enemies out there with an insecticide as well, and that's not always a good thing either. Stripe rust is something that we have not seen so far in Michigan, or I haven't found it, and I haven't heard anybody finding it, although there are lots of reports down in the southern states that it's running rampant down there. Maybe not rampant, but there is inoculum down there. And where do we get our spores? They come in on storm fronts, and there has been lots of storm fronts coming out of the Gulf bringing moisture in storms into Michigan. So there's been the potential to bring these spores up here, but I suspect that maybe temperatures have been a little bit too cool, and we just haven't had much development of stripe rust in Michigan so far. A few years ago, we did have significant damage, and so we were able to get some variety susceptibility and resistance data on these. So we actually have one of the state yield trial locations was rated, and the data from that and the ratings are located at this website here. And I can make that available to anybody after the call is done here. In terms of fungicides, if you do have stripe rust, nearly all of the fungicides are rated either VG or E, which is very good to excellent. You don't want to apply any later than 10.51. If you're approaching flowering and you do see the disease, probably one application for head scab would be adequate with where we're at with the prices of the commodities and kind of yield potential of this wheat crop. I'm not sure there's a lot of money out there just to go throw an extra application of a fungicide on for stripe rust. So if you're getting close to flowering, I would save that money and use it toward your head scab application. So in terms of picking your growth stage for head scab application, The target is 10.51. And this image just shows wheat at different growth stages. At 10.1 is the boot stage, and you can see it's still contained within the stem. At 10.2, you can see the top part of it starting to emerge out of the collar. By 10.3, you're seeing at least a couple of spikelets starting to emerge out of there. And 10.3 is important because there's a new fungicide, Miravis Ace, that says that you can apply early, and they're saying as early as 10.3, you can apply Miravis Ace for head scab control. 10.5 is when the full head has emerged out of the collar, and then the 10.51 is when flowering starts. So these are kind of the growth stages that you're really looking for in terms of when you want to time your fungicide application for head scab. This is just a close-up image of a head where flowering has started or anthesis has started, and that is considered 10.51. And notice it starts in the center of the head on those middle spikelets, and then it progresses up and down to the distal ends of the plant. Mid-flowering, and there's late flowering. Now, as far as timing, I mentioned that there's going to be quite a lot of variability out there in the field, and you're going to have plants that are flowering, and you're going to have some that are still possibly even in the boot stage. So how do you time that fungicide to get the best application and the best control? It's going to be kind of challenging to do that. Your target is for control is you want to try to target when half of your primary tillers are between that 10.51 and say plus 4 days after that. Marty Chilvers and Martin Egelkirk have done some work on that. We used to think that you had to apply right at that 10.51, but there are 4 or 5 days after flowering that you can still be very effective. In fact, possibly a little more effective with your fungicide application. This year is going to be a challenge. All I can say is do the best, scout your fields and try to keep track of the growth stages and look at multiple areas of the field. Don't stop in one area and look at where you're at as far as growth stage. And try to time it as best you can to get the best control on the most amount of heads that are flowering with that head scab application, because it's going to be a challenge for sure. I wanted to mention the Fusarium Head Blight Prediction Center. This is a website located at actually Penn State University. This is a collaborative effort of a bunch of land-grant universities across the Midwest and East. This particular image here, I pulled for the United States. You can select Michigan if you want. I chose a susceptible variety for winter wheat, and I just said, what are the current conditions? You can do forecasts with 24, 48, and 72 hours. And then I pulled this on Monday to put in this presentation. It just gives you a risk rating of, what level of risk based on weather conditions there are for your area. So that might be a useful tool in kind of helping to determine, where you're at and timing of your application this year, particularly with the variability. I would use this prediction center as kind of additional information in helping to make that decision. Like I said before, we are flowering later this year than what we have in the past, and uniformity is going to be an issue. We have 3 fungicides that work well for head scab application. Make sure you don't use a strobilurin for head scab application. And really, with the crop condition where it's at, it would be a shame to get to a crop and then really get discounted because of poor quality and vomitoxin issues. So if you're going to try to save money in growing the crop, I don't think I would cut back on your head scab application. That's just, it's too risky to do that. So there's an updated fact sheet that I haven't got posted on the web yet, but I'll get it posted today that Martin and Marty put together, and that has some good information on that as well. So that'll be located on the MSU Extension wheat page. And the last thing I just wanted to mention is the Michigan Wheat Field Day. That's June 12th at the MSU Plant Pathology Farm. We've got a variety of topics. All our researchers will be there discussing their research that they have funded. There's no cost to attend, but please register at michiganwheat.org. There will be REP and CCA credits, and it's a partnership between MSU Extension, Michigan Wheat, and Michigan Crop Improvement Association. So that's a good chance to visit one-on-one and face-to-face with each of the researchers that are doing work with wheat. Then I also wanted to mention the MSU AG Innovation Day on July 26th. This year we'll focus on precision technology that pays. There's a variety of stations that we're looking at really some of the latest and greatest technology that we utilize in row crop agriculture. So I really encourage you to consider attending that. And with that, I will take any questions that anybody has.
Thanks, Dennis. We do have one in the chat box. Well, it's a comment. Chris says, I only have seen one field over threshold for aphids in 23 years, and it was a weird breeder's trial. Not to reflect the work of our fine breeders, but the natural enemy populations grow on aphids in wheat and move into other crops like soy and control soybean aphids. One of the things we see in too, and I think Chris would say somewhat the same thing, maybe on cereal leaf beetle. We see a bit on that with winter wheat, but I don't think I've ever seen a case, even though it's unsightly. I don't know, Dennis or Chris, if you've ever seen a case over threshold on winter wheat. But that's another one that probably is scarier than what it actually is. Visually, it doesn't look so good, but I don't think we'll have a problem with that either.